This is Ken Brott of the Palm Springs Public Library's Local History Project, Prickly Pears, Portrait of a Historical Palm Springs. Today I'm talking with Ted Theodore, Ted McKinney, and Barbara Moore McKinney, and we are discussing local history. I will start by asking Ted to maybe tell me a little bit about his parents, how they came here, and who they were. Ted?
Hi, Ken. To the best of our knowledge, our mother and father came down from Morongo Valley in 1915 with my 5 brothers and older brothers and sisters. Our father, Oliver Stowe McKinney, was born in Colorado, Canyon City, Colorado. And after serving in the Spanish-American War with Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders, he settled in San Jacinto, where my mother had migrated from Missouri after being born, coming from, I don't know whether it was Indiana or Illinois, but it was on the way to the West Coast that she was born, and came on to San Jacinto where they met. They were married in Colton, and to get a grub stake they went north to Oroville, where they mined for, I don't know, 1-2 years, and got their grub stake. He bought a well rig, horse-powered of course, and came back south and started drilling wells from Banning, Yucca Valley, Morongo Valley, Desert Hot Springs. And then in 1915, Raymond Cree, the superintendent of schools, enticed them to come down to drill a well down across from the Elks at the Cree Ranch. And Mother's thought that it was just going to be for a few months, but anyway, they camped out down at the Deepwell Ranch and under some trees there, and they drilled the well for Raymond Cree. I don't know that this was the main reason why he got them down or not, because that year there was 8-point-something daily attendance in the school, and they had 4 in that school that year. Anyway, they drilled a well for Raymond Cree, and they drilled a well for the Foldeses at the Palm Springs Hotel. They bought 80 acres on the down payment and for down just west of the Deepwell Ranch. But that lasted for about 2 or 3 years. They had apricot trees planted, and they planted alfalfa and crops, regular vegetable crops. But after about 3 years, the water was diverted to North Palm Canyon, North Palm Springs, up past Section 14. P.T. Stevens, I guess, had the water rights at that time, and they having no money, they didn't try and fight it at all. He planted asparagus up there, and I think they also used it for the Cane Breaks golf course, which is out on Sunrise and Vistachino, or was, and also maybe for the O'Donnell, because I know they were irrigating from a reservoir on North Palm Canyon Drive. I think it's still there, Kenny. Anyway, so when the water was shut off from there, they moved up on the corner of Ramon and Indian Avenue. That was where Barbara and I were born. I was born January 11th, 1919. And the home that they were living in, making ends meet by, milking the cows and the chickens and everything, that just making them ends meet. And I guess my father worked for the highway for a while, maintenance, and the railroad, cooking, and just odd jobs in between the wells that he was drilling. After they got started there, just got their feet down almost, I think it was it 3 years, Barbara, or something?
Well, it was 26 when we moved over here.
Yeah, but they built another little cottage too.
Well, I think they moved up there in 24, where we were born. No, they moved up there before that. I don't know when they moved up there. I think they the house burned down in 24.
Yeah.
We moved down here in 26.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when were you born, Barbara?
October 23rd, 22.
22.
And anyway, I remember they cut the house in two, and then they rolled it down what's now Callioho to where the trailer park was at 634 South Palm Canyon, and they put it on telephone poles, and then they'd push it a ways, and then they'd take a telephone pole out from behind, put it in front, and push it a ways further.
Just before they moved down here, I remember Mrs. Gillette coming by and seeing some Joshua trees and yucca trees and some barrel cactus there, and this is King Gillette's wife, and they were just moving up in the Palm Canyon Mesa tract. And because we didn't have any running water, and these were the only plants that didn't take much water, why, we had them out in the front yard, or my mother and dad did, and she noticed them, and she had him bring in some plants for her. And this is the way that my father and mother got started in the desert nursery business. And they planted trees for O'Donnell up on O'Donnell Hill. They planted them for Hi-Hos and Kellogg's and
Birch.
Hoods, Davenports. Did I say them? I can't remember all of them. Anyway, he planted the palm trees all over town. In fact, have a beautiful picture with a bulldog Mac sitting up on O'Donnell Hill, and we'll have to get a picture of it sometime later in this deal. But anyway, he planted trees all over the valley, and saguaro cactus he shipped even to South Carolina. Anyway, to get back to where we just moved down here to start up the old trailer park, and our home was here for most of our lives, just across the street from where we are at the car wash now, at the trailer park. You want to add something in here?
Well, Kenny was asking before about the family and I guess their birth dates. My dad was born January 29th, 77. My mother, February 13th, 86.
Don't you have some pictures of them?
Yes.
Yeah, this is about a year after they were married. And their oldest son, Glenn, was born on their first wedding anniversary. And he was born October 14th, 04. Errol was born May 18th of 6. Theo was born 24th of April in 8. Eldon was born the 16th of December in 9. Willard was born the 9th of November in 14. Ted was born January 11th, 1919. He was the first white child born in Palm Springs.
Question mark.
You're white. And I was born October 23rd of 22, and Don was born October 11th, 28. So that gave them 8 children. And when our house burned down at the corner of Ramon and Indian, we have a picture of the folks standing by their car, and Mother wrote at the bottom of the picture, all 8 kids and 7 kids, Don wasn't born yet, in a car, and Mother and Dad. And it says, what we had left when the house burned down. And that was it.
Kenny, you were speaking of agriculture earlier, and I would just like to say that there was quite a bit of agriculture here. The Indians had the Orchard Trailer Park, which was apricots down South Palm Canyon Drive, just past where you turn east on East Palm Canyon. McGill had nice grazing land down where the Ralph's is now, where the Rancho Trailer Park used to be. That was all in alfalfa, about 10 acres. Then I was speaking about the asparagus on the north end of town. This was a real agricultural area. Oh, McCallum, the first one, actually. I mean, he had orchard in just north of the tennis club. north and east of the tennis club.
I remember seeing so many pictures of the orchards up against the mountain itself.
Hmm. And so it was really a agricultural area, and they had aqueducts running. Well, the one that ran to South Palm Canyon down by the Deep Well Ranch was coming from Whitewater, and it was just a clay-lined dirt ditch. And the one that McCallum put in from, and the Indians from Talkwitz ran over by the tennis club, through the old Desert Inn, across just north of the Spa Hotel, and over in Section 14. And they had quite a few crops in there, and grazing lands, trees.
I don't think anybody recognizes how much agriculture was here initially in Palm Springs.
No, there was quite a lot of agriculture. We had a 4-inch pipe running across Palm Canyon out here from Talkwitz. We had a ditch down, and then it was piped under the road. And when we had campsites and eventually a trailer park at 634 South Palm Canyon, sometimes in the morning when the water would be running and full and cold, we'd find trout on the lawn flipping, just small ones, but there were actually trout on our lawn.
Well, our father, he put a 6-inch pipe under Palm Canyon Drive, and it ran there at the trailer park for, well, until the late 30s, early 40s.
Till they widened the highway and we let them take it out.
Yeah.
So we lost our water rights.
Was
We and the Indians.
Was that McKinney's court at that time?
Yes,
Was it?
McKinney's Palm Canyon Court. In fact, this 10 acres where we're sitting and the court was only a little over 2 acres. But my folks bought this for a tax sale also. And they only got 2 of the 3 brothers to sign. And after about 10 years, well, before that even, number 1, no running water, no electricity, no gas, and my mother cooked on a wood stove in the summer. And this just gets me, boy. But anyway, to get water down here, they sold the property where the Builder Supply is today, and the station there at Ramon Road. That approximately 3 acres went to get water into South Palm Canyon Drive. And then the 3rd brother that hadn't signed the papers, and this was, by the way, this was San Diego County at this time, it wasn't Riverside County. He sued them for damages or part of the property, and they had the date set, and they were on their way back to San Diego, just packing, getting ready when they got the message that the trial was over. Their attorney had given them the wrong date, so they just forfeited the property right across the street from the car wash, the 2 acres there, and proceeded on with life. It seems like my mother and dad had a lot of ups and downs, but they really took care of it very nicely. Anyway, when they started in on the trailer park, they had just little spaces and the little trailers, and might like to say that Margaret Boynton, an old maid that lived on Section 14, had a horse named Peaches, and they moved her palm leaf shanty down, and that was maybe the first renter they might have had. But sure was.
And also the Halls came from Canada, remember, and they rented land and built their own house. Because at that time, most of the people who didn't have a great deal of money, and everybody in Palm Springs either had a great deal of money or none at all. They were rich or they were poor. There were no in between except maybe Mr. Licken. And anyway, they leased a little piece of land from us and built a house on it, because if you build on Indian land at that time, the Indians weren't considered competent or whatever. So if you build a house on their land and you build it too nice, they just moved in. I mean, you know, there was nothing you could legally hold them to. So that's why a lot of the houses, shacks, were on Section 14 when the city burned them down and sent them up north and sent them to Banning or wherever.
Were those the 2 little houses right on Palm Canyon itself?
No, I'm not talking about here. That was our property, but the Indian property,
I see.
they didn't dare build nice houses on because you couldn't hold an Indian to a lease. I mean,
Well,
it was.
What year are we talking here, if I may?
Well, we're talking 29, 30,
Okay.
up to 56, 56 or 58.
56,
They
right.
distributed the land to the Indians, I think.
See, you have to remember that Palm Springs is a checkerboard. When the railroads came west, the federal government gave them every other square mile, 10 miles on either side of the tracks, not realizing that there was an Indian village here, and so when it turned out that there was an Indian village here, they got every other square mile. And it was one of those things that the Indians had their squatters' rights, and that was all. Until this 56 or wherever it was back about 56, I guess, when Leah Reynos sued the federal government. And in turn, finally won the suit, and that's where the Ocotillo Hotel is, and that's where all the development down from South Palm Canyon Drive east to the Ocotillo, or just east of the Ocotillo. Indians, we used to have an Indian play right up here in Talquitz Canyon. Our two older sisters, Errol and Theo, they were in the play, dressed up as an Indian maiden, and also the Lost Horizon was filmed at Talquitz Falls, and my dad put the horse up over the top of the falls, hog-tied it, and put it on a platform, and ran it up there on cable. And from there, let's go to grammar school. Barbara, how about grammar school?
Let me ask you a question here. How many years did that play go on? Was it an annual event?
It was the Fire Dance, I think, was the name of it, and they had it for several years. I don't know. It started before Ramona. It was immediately before they started
I'm always
doing
trying
Ramona
to put dates to
in
these
Hammett.
things. Are we talking now around 1924, 26,
Yeah.
along in there?
Yeah,
I just-
24.
24.
more.
I see. I always wonder, we talk about something, and
Well, they were
it seems like it's
born
so
in-
important to have dates on them.
Well, they were born in 6 and 8, and they were teenagers.
Around 24.
Something-
And Errol, well, to go to grammar school, sometimes during the lunch hour, we would catch Indian ponies and ride them. We went to school where everybody's village is now. It was the Francis Stevens School. And there were a band of 50 or so horses just roaming around and trying to find something to eat. A few of them the Indians kept themselves, and they actually belonged to them, but there were many that were born and they just didn't want them because you couldn't raise enough alfalfa or whatever to feed them, so they just roamed around. And my sister started a stable here by catching Indian ponies and breaking them and renting them. She used to ride with Leslie Charteris, who was the saint. They'd ride out in the middle of the desert and take...
Oh, you led the horses with Errol. Now how about grammar school again? What were your girlfriends, Virginia Valentine, and my ex, Dorothy?
Yeah, Peanut,
Widow.
Dorothy Ann Kane, Virginia Valentine.
What did you girls do?
Whose father was a druggist. And one of the big things that happened was when Patterson's drugstore got ice, and we could have a Coke with ice in it, and we could have ice cream.
I think you should say pharmacist instead of druggist, though. Nowadays.
Yeah, the car washers are druggists. Go on.
Well, and we went to school, I did at least. I walked to school barefooted. Barbara says she hid her shoes on the way or
I
on the way
had some
home.
old Oxfords I didn't like that I was supposed to wear to school, so I'd walk as far as Ramon Road, take my shoes off, hide them in a bush, and go to school barefoot.
This was up at Francis Stevens.
Francis Stevens. We walked from here.
We both went all the way through school there. That was the school.
And we had the usual games of that day, and soccer and softball. And I remember Harry Reed, his father had a clinic right north of the Francis Stevens School. And he'd be sitting on home plate with a bat and ball, so he was first up. and Catherine Finchy was there, one of our old principals and teachers, along with Miss Newberry and Newberg, and that's about
And Julia Richards became our sister-in-law when Glenn and she were married. And then we rode a bus to Banning to high school. I did my senior year. You did all 4 years.
And after each, if you had any extracurricular activities such as baseball, football, basketball, or library work, you had to hitchhike home and just hang your thumb out and away it'd come. And in those days, no bridges. Mainly it was just dips in the road and just a two-width paved highway.
Was the highway paved coming into Palm Springs or just the highway out?
No, by high school it was paved.
It was.
Yeah, and we had a bridge at Windy Point too at that time.
In fact, in '38 we had a flood when we were both in high school in Banning. It flooded and it washed out a bridge near Cabazon, and we had to stay in Banning for 3 whole days. It was awful.
That was 37.
Wasn't it awful? We were on our own for 3 whole days. Roamed all over town, the whole high school did.
And so then Barbara, going to high school out here, her sophomore year, when the school first opened up, she met her husband out here, Bob Moore.
Barbara, this is about 1939, our first high school year?
Yeah, I went to Banning 37, 38, and 38, 39 was when the high school out here opened. Went there 3 years, graduated in 41.
And she went to service with her husband in the Navy, and I went to the University of Redlands, and my senior year there, then Pearl Harbor and off to the wars, and I ended up flying the hump from India to Burma and China. And which we had the Hump Pilots reunion here in, I think, 1972. And so that brings us up to the war days, and I think that's where you wanted to cut it off, Bob?
I think so. I'd like to ask, when did your parents pass away?
Mother died May 28th of 68, and Dad died June 20-something of 56.
56.
And we've lost 3 brothers.
My dad and all 3 brothers of cancer, and my mother from a ruptured aorta. So Ted must quit smoking.
She's not thinking of herself at all. You think that's it for today? You got enough for today?
I think that's enough. Yeah, we will get back to this. I would like to add that the date is June
20th.
1986, and this has been an interview for the Palm Springs Public Library.
And we were down at the Desert Hand Car Wash.
Thank you very much.